children of all ages, except of course my channel is not is marked not for kids, so maybe I shouldn't say it that way. I don't know. It's Thursday. It's the Mattriachy. I am here with Cap'n Cummings and Mr. Douglas Ernst. Which, Doug, I should give you the bigger window. Yeah.
I don't know. Whatever. You're the host, man.
Well, yeah, but we're here to talk about your book. So
cool. Always like talking to you.
Well, I hope I'm good to talk to. It's been a while. Well, I guess you were on with our last old guy stream about a month ago, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So it hasn't been that long since you were on.
Yeah, time is kind of slipping away from me here. The past couple of weeks have been a little insane, so my mind is a little fuzzy here.
Yeah. Conversely, it's been almost a year, I think, since we had the captain on.
Has it been that long?
I think so. It was well, not quite. It was May, I think, just after you school was done, I think.
So pretty close.
Yeah, it's getting close, getting up there. Yeah. So, Doug, now of course, one of the things you're doing different with this Soulfinder, and I think it's so cool because it's something that I'm super jealous of. Where you're getting it direct to customers, you're avoiding the whole crowdfunding platform. You got people coming out in droves to line up around the virtual block to check you out, which is cool. But how many? The one downside is we don't get to see how many books you're selling.
That's true.
Yeah. So we just get the photos that we're seeing about, big pallets of boxes, but that's just a box. How many have you moved, man?
I have not checked in with Iconic since last. Wait, what's the date today? Today's Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I haven't checked in and got actual numbers from them since around Monday. It was over 400. The last time I talked to Iconic and Tim, they were just like, we're sure it's over. It's like over a little 400, and then they keep coming in. So it's been 3 or 4 days since then. So, but I haven't checked since then. So, for my 60 days of the Indiegogo campaign, I had something like, I want to say, was it 1,100 total backers. So we're only a week and a day in right now, and we're well over 400 right now. So
yeah, that's like a third.
Yeah, we're doing pretty well, and I haven't even done. One, I don't even have my soft covers. I want my soft covers in. I got to get the air, and I had to literally reprint all my soft covers. And we ran out of rosaries last week, and I had to get another batch and get them down to Texas. So, same thing as last time. I'm doing all the international customers. So actually, I guess if you wanted to add the international customers in, let's just say 425 for domestic is a safe number, I think, right now. And then I would say at least I've sent probably about 50. So we're closing on 500 backers at least right now when you international and domestic. So everything's going pretty well. And I haven't even really done nearly as the first time I did all sorts of YouTube streams all over the place. I haven't done that. I have 2 kind of sizable ones that are not within the comics realm coming up. They're within Catholic Twitter, and those will be next week. So that'll be an interesting to see how that goes.
Very cool. So yeah, and so what this is the first time. Of course, this is your second book, right? It's the first time in hardcover. What made you pull the trigger with the hardcover?
So part of it was just working with Matt Weldon, and I love Matt's art, and I was like, dude, this guy is really, really good. Obviously, Tim is a great artist as well, but I was like, I want to show Matt on this one for sure, because I want to keep working with him. I want to show him that I respect his art, and I want to give people something really special. And with the second outing, I wanted to show people okay, I learned a lot on the first one, and with the second one, I want to make another. So every time you have to make some sort of statement that rises above all of the white noise, every other thing competing for your dollars, your time, your money. If you're in comics, there's dozens and dozens and dozens of crowdfunding campaigns. So how do you stand out amongst a crowd of all these people that are doing crowdfunding campaigns? There has to be something. And one way would be for me to do a hardcover book that's just, in my mind, incredibly well put together, and the presentation was just awesome.
Well, it definitely was. I mean, like I said, I've got my copy right here. It's got the gold on the edge. It's got the Soulfinder, which was gold on the first one. It's got the glow in the dark ink on it. And the only complaint personally that I have about this, and this is something that no one else will care about. So I have psoriasis, so I leave like flakes of skin everywhere I go. And yours cover, it's got that non-gloss stuff. My flakes just stick to it really bad. So I'm wiping your book off like all the time. But that's not a problem.
That one I don't know if I have an answer for. I'll have to get with API on the psoriasis situation.
Can we get a non-static resistant, dust resistant paper like that almanac?
The thing that I would say is the cover, when you see it like on your computer, a lot of the times, like people's books, I think they look cooler on the computer than they do in person. And this is like the exact opposite with the glare and the matting, different glare. And then I haven't even tried to like turn off the light and look at the glow in the dark, but it's super cool. And I got both covers, and then was super excited about the sketch on the inside. So
yeah. The Matt Weldon cover, especially with the woman on the back, that's it turned out really well with the glow in the dark.
Mm-hmm. Well, I haven't seen the glow in the dark yet. I haven't. I mean, that's a really cool concept, but you just don't think, oh, I need to go turn off the light so you can go so you can check it out.
I did.
Right. Yeah. Some people will eventually like find it out by accident. They'll be like reading it like later at night next to their nightstand, and then just turn the lights out and be like, like what the heck?
Yeah. So, Doug Tenaple with Earthworm Jim had a hidden Earthworm Jim picture in glow in the dark ink that you couldn't see at first, and it was one of those where like if it was on there, it was and didn't tell anyone about it. I was flipping the pages in the light, and the light from my kitchen, I mean from my living room light fixture caught it just right as it turned the page, and I'm like, that does not what paper looks like. So then I held the thing up to the side, and I was like, there's a picture. It's a glow in the dark picture. But I heard you talk about this one, Doug, on your stream. So when it got here, I set it out on in my front room, right in the sun, and then I took it into the bathroom to check it out.
Yeah, I just having an anglerfish on the cover, and that just seemed to make sense to have a glow in the dark situation. So if API was able to do that, then I definitely wanted to do that.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's great with the thing. So Phil, you got yours ordered this week?
Yeah. So I ordered it the first day, and then I got it like Wednesday or something. Or no, that was yesterday. I think I got it Tuesday.
Yeah. So what did you think? What were your first thoughts?
Like the story starts out, and it's much like the first one. You know, it has this sort of like shocking scene, and it makes you kind of like stop and think about what's going on with just the images. There's a lot of imagery, and then you know, the story moves really fast paced. There's good action, and you're really learning like more about the world because you already know the characters from the first issue. and I thought the pacing was better than the first one. The first one I think could have breathed a little bit, even though I really, really liked it. This one, like, everything just flowed perfectly. I thought it was fantastic.
The only thing that that I really felt like kind of took me off guard was when Redder comes up from this mild spoilers. There's a diving scene. And when in a book called Black Tide, there's a diving scene. You might not have picked that up there, people. Anyway, when Redder comes up from diving, and Chua tells him a plot point that I'm going to try not to spoil the thing. It was one of those things where I was like, I knew that so and so, there was a ne'er-do-well aboard, and I who it is, but his exact identity was something I didn't know that had been established yet. So that was sort of surprising to me. I was like, and maybe go back. I had to go back and reread that previous section and everything, and it was something. So that was
something. I'm not too concerned with spoiling it, I guess, maybe. So you could just say spoiler. I'll try and talk around it. So there's a character's name. So if you look at it, the name of the ship, when they first come upon the ship, is Kurtz's widow. Okay. And so if you're a literary type guy, you would be like, Kurtz, that sounds familiar. And then you would be familiar with Conrad's Heart of Darkness. And at that point in time, Father Crane and Chua, Chua actually asks the captain about it, who calls himself Redburn. And he says, well, it's, a ship belonged to my friend. The ship was the lust of his life. Well, if you know that it's related to Heart of Darkness, most likely it would be like, something's a little off there. Like from the reader's point of view, like, was he just referencing Heart of Darkness, or is this character lying? But then Redburn is another one where if you're like a nerd English major or whatever, you would know that that's related to Melville and a character Redburn as well. So even his name is a lie in many respects. So that was like a little clue. Like the more well-read that you are, if you're like Father Crane, then you would be like, something's a little off here. Something's not quite right. And so there's a part later where Crane asks the captain about his library, and he says, oh, like Kurtz, like Heart of Darkness or whatever. And so that's a little part where it's like, oh, he's cluing in that something is not right with this guy.
So I guess I have to confess I haven't finished Moby Dick yet then.
Yeah, that's not actually a reference to a Moby Dick, but the more that you know about Melville and shipping and whaling and all that sort of stuff, so you might not actually know, but it still, in some respects, was a little bit of a clue, a little bit of a tip-off, and that's one of those things where, for me, how do I say it? I'm trying to write it on multiple levels and be entertaining. So people will still eventually find out the truth about this character or that character, whoever it is. But, depending on who you are and how much you read or this or that, things will start to add up quicker, more quickly to you.
So, well, there you go. Now I feel a little silly on my own show, but that's okay. No, I thought the reveal of the ne'er-do-wells, that he was definitely not on the side of angels, was pretty that was pretty obvious. They had a lot of tension with with a lot of tension with everybody on board. And I thought that was really well done in the dialogue.
The other clue that was given is when they're initially talking early on. So I'm giving you a little bit of spoilers here. Is he mentions that he was an EOD diver, And he says that, but then later on, Redder sort of clues in that something's not quite right, because then he sees the symbol that he sees is actually the symbol that submariners use. And so he was a former Navy guy. He mentions EOD diver, but then at the same time, he's got a submariner symbol in his cabin, eating in the kitchen. And so it's like, So it was one of these things where I was trying to basically just plant seeds, and everyone at different levels was kind of finding out on their own sort of timeline. And then the other one was obviously he's speaking in different languages, which people that are possessed also speak languages that they don't understand. And there's a part where basically in German, he says, the demon speaking through the character says, the captain is not in charge of the ship's rudder at this point in time, meaning the demons are in charge. And this particular character is sort of dissolving into the abyss. His identity is slowly sort of fading away.
So now that comes up to another thing that I don't know, right? So you guys are both servicemen or former. I am not. Right. So I don't know all of the designations for stuff. And I did not read these near an internet connection, so I couldn't even stop my reading and go look it up or something, But what is an EOD diver?
It's like bomb disposal.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So that would not be something that is part of a submariner's routine job, because submariners are inside submarines, not outside, right?
Well, so the thing is, and Captain Cummings could speak more on the Navy. I'm not a Navy guy, so that's for sure. But my main thing with this guy was he's not quite what he seems, but he's also dealing with Navy SEALs. He could be dealing, if he was like a nuclear submarine, commander, he might throughout the course of his career come into contact with all these different specialties, learn things here or there, and as he develops friendships, especially after he got out, if you maintain those friendships, you could always get certified as a diver or whatnot. But the main point was just that he's a liar. He's not, when he says something, you can't necessarily take it at face value.
Yeah. Well, and there was one point that Chu was calling him on it too, and they basically just laughed at him for having the audacity. So I thought that was a fun little tidbit too. So another question that I had, and it has come up before, and I've never looked into it, but since I've got you on here, this page here, guy's got Crane's file.
Yeah, it's DD-214.
Yeah, what is that?
So when you exit the military, you get a DD-214 form, or at least the Army. I don't know what the Navy's equivalent would be, or if it's even the same or not. But when you exit the Army, that's what you get, and that'll let you know all your records. It'll say whether you got an honorable discharge, honorable, dishonorable, all of that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. That's good to know, because I've seen that designation around places, but I've just never taken the time to look it up before. And I don't mean just in your work. I mean in other stuff too, like around Twitter and whatever else. I've just seen it thrown around.
A lot of times when guys get out, they basically celebrate. And I think there's even like a big blanket that's just a DD-214 that people have. There's all sorts of jokes, and people do little jigs when they get their DD-214. And so, yeah, if you were in the military, especially if you were in the Army, that would be a number that you would recognize instantly.
So, Captain, since Doug is not a Navy person, and you were, how did he do with the accuracy of that sort of thing?
I mean, with the EOD, for example, you wouldn't have him on a submariner ship or even like a regular ship most of the time. Like EODs, they'd be hanging out with the SEALs or the SWIC people who usually drive around the SEALs. If they had a mission that the carrier or the cruiser could take them to, they might do that, but their home base wouldn't be the ship. as far as like representing the Navy in the story, like all the terminology was, you know, spot on. As I saw in there, he had somebody that informed him of all that information, and like I really liked. What was that?
No, sorry, I'll let you finish. You finish out, and there's something I want to say after about the scuba diving.
Oh yeah. I mean, I like the whole being in the Navy. I really get into the like, well, I guess also being a history person. Like I get into the like swashbuckling like ship type stories, and that has this in here too. There's also the like Lovecraftian type stuff that was in there, which I was surprised that you said you've never read any of his stuff before.
No, people keep asking me that.
Like done inside the story, I was like, huh, that's really surprising.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, the thing is like one of the, even without outside of Lovecraft, right? First of all, I think like if you look at like biblical scholarship, there are hints in the Old Testament, in the book of Jonah, in the book of Job, and there are things in the Gospels that link the sea to the supernatural, not like in a one-to-one relationship, but that you know, there's part of it, you know, a lot of word pictures of sea monsters and all that kind of stuff that get used into some of that thing. And of course, you know, Jesus, you know, rebukes the storm on the Sea of Galilee, right? So I think there's some of that, but I think also if you look at fiction beyond just come on, what's his name? We just said it.
Lovecraft.
Sorry, beyond just Lovecraft, the terror of the sea is a big thing. I mean, and you know, whether it's Rudyard Kipling, or there's whole classes of Japanese stories that are based around the creepy crawlies under the ocean. So I think there's a lot of room to come to similar conclusions as some of the texture stuff that Lovecraft did. So, but I do want to go ahead and talk about one thing, because this is something I heard you. I can't remember if you mentioned it to me or if it was on a show or whatever. But this page right here, right, with this awesome galleon right there, that awesome cargo ship. If I remember right, that was not what was originally in the script.
Yeah, initially it was an English passenger ship that existed, I want to say like 50 years later than that, maybe even like 75 years later. And that's what Matt drew. So then suddenly I was like, well, I guess it's a Spanish galleon. All right. And then the name was actually different as well. So then I had to change the name, and I was like, okay, well, it actually fits better with the story I'm trying to tell. And then it became the Star of the Sea. And so if people kind of do their research into Star of the Sea, they'll see that that is another name for Our Lady, which ties into the Rosary, which ties into the ending as well. So all of this is linked to Jesus's mother in many, many ways. Okay. And so Matt's sort of just going forward with that galleon after reading the script. It actually made everything better in many ways.
Well, and that's actually something that I did not look into. Man, bad host. I did not look into the name. The Star of the Sea did not connect it to Mary. But it does explain, because there's a point where spoiler alert, where there is a particular item that is taken from the ship that is referred to as the lady's weapon. And I thought that was weird, because it wasn't being held by a woman to begin with, and it wasn't being used by a woman at that point in the story. But it's because it was being housed by the ship, which then ties in the other thing. So that's clever. That's fun.
Yeah, so there's some things that happen in the story. If you're not Catholic, you might not get certain elements of it, and that's again where I was trying to write in a way where whether you're in the military or not in the military, whether you're Catholic, you're not Catholic, whether you're an English major, you're not, like, people will just get things on different levels, but the more that they look into some of it, then it'll make sense. So the ship itself has this middle quality to it. It has the miraculous Eucharist. There's this rosary in the hand of this cardinal who is linked to all of it. It's Star of the Sea, obviously tied to, I sense the woman being the rosary. If she intercedes right now, I will tactical retreat. And so again, if you're a Catholic, you're like, oh, okay, the demon's going to be scared, like incredibly scared of Our Lady, and he's going to be like, I will live to fight another day. See you later. And so there's all of that sort of stuff in there.
Very cool. Very cool. So
the one thing that I was going to say earlier to quickly circle back is on the Navy stuff is there's a moment, this is like a little inside thing. If you look at one of the characters, he's actually wearing what's called like a Draeger rebreather, and the bad guy or the villain, and those in real life, they actually, it just recycles the it's a lot of like Navy SEALs use them, and so there's no bubbles. So if you were going on a mission, you don't want bubbles rising to the surface. If you're coming towards an enemy ship or something along those lines, you don't want bubbles floating up. But the Draeger rebreather with bubbles, because artists love bubbles. And then I was like, I can't tell Matt to take out the bubbles because I had actually talked to a Navy SEAL veteran about all of this sort of stuff. And he's like, yeah, the Draeger rebreathers will just, so I wanted the guy with the military background to actually have a Draeger rebreather. And then you see that Redder actually has a normal sort of scuba gear that has the bubbles as well. So that's a little inside scoop on the script as well.
Yeah, I would not have picked up on that.
I don't think I would have either. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have.
But Navy SEALs that read the book, they're going to be like, hey, you had a Draeger rebreather and it was showing bubbles. What the heck? Like, but it was in the script that there are no bubbles, but bubbles still made it in.
Well, you could just say that
Hollywood, though. Like, whenever I watch a movie and they're doing like something electrical and the panel just like explodes or something, and you're like,
yeah. Even if you get knocked back doing electrical, you don't usually see anything. You just feel it. I had a totally unrelated story, but I used to do building, and I was doing the siding on this outside of this house, and I was up on a what do you call it? I can't remember the name, scaffold. And it's windy and it's cold, and I've got my S-Twing hammer and I'm getting ready to hammer some siding onto this wall, and I pull my hand back and the guy on the scaffold with me grabs my arm halfway pulled back, and I'm like, what are you doing? You're gonna knock me off the scaffold. And he said, you were 2 inches from hitting the power line.
oh my
I was like, oh, well then. It was 220 going into this farmhouse.
It would have blew you.
I would have really fallen off the scaffold at that point. But
we had a guy that he had a metal ladder for some stupid reason. You're supposed to use fiberglass.
Fiberglass, yeah.
And he touched the power line with the ladder. Electrician, but he wasn't on the job. He was doing like work on his house or something, and it just blew right through his foot. So his feet were like totally messed up.
Oh man, that's terrifying.
Terrifying. That stuff's scary. Anyways,
yeah. So, we didn't come here to talk about electricity, but yeah, I was going to say you could just tell people that it's just that Father Redder breathes a lot. Those are all his bubbles. They're just lots and lots of bubbles.
Yeah, I mean, it helps with the atmospherics of the scene anyway. So it's hard to do underwater scenes in general, and so the bubbles help in many ways. So I was just like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And I tell you, like we were talking over chat. It was yesterday, today, I don't remember, but you're talking about the choice of full page spreads. And I got to tell you, man, when they first go into the cabin and find the priest, that's just gorgeous. That just it's a really great scene.
Yeah, I wanted to with this one. So this one, as I was telling.
It's right here.
The first one was very character driven. This one is plot driven, and I wanted to expand the world. I wanted to establish these guys as a team, and so that was actually kind of the main point of the story. Is I wanted to cement the idea that these were it was a tight knit group of guys, and they were a team. And so with that particular part of the story, I was like, all right, I want to have this like Indiana Jones feel to everything, and put Indiana Jones and scuba and have the same thing. And a lot of people, they're not familiar with incorruptibles within the Catholic Church, these priests or other very holy people that die, and then their body just doesn't decompose. And if it does decompose, it's at like an incredibly slow rate, where they could be dead for 75 years, but their body just looks like normal. And it might be pliable, but there's no embalming situation going on. It's just they're dead and their body's not decomposing. And so I thought it would be cool if you're swimming through this shipwreck, you're seeing the skeletons of people that died in each other's arms, and it's dark, and you're looking for this thing, and then all of a sudden your flashlight comes up, and there's just a body of this guy that's just like standing, like, floating like right before you, like he's been waiting for you for however many years. He's dead, but he looks like perfect. Like, it would be kind of terrifying, but also really cool as well.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, I first became aware of incorruptible corpses. I've got a buddy who's Greek Orthodox, and the Metropolitan of San Francisco, who passed away back in the 90s, his corpse is incorrupt. And so he was just St. John I can't remember he's got an honorific, but I can't remember what it is. But yeah, it was, so that was my first exposure to it. So when you had mentioned that, I was like, well, that's a cool plot point. That's cool. So I think it's a neat,
last year I actually met someone who was a living relative of somebody who was an incorruptible, and now they're in the process of essentially being seen if they could be worthy essentially of becoming a saint or whatnot. And I 5 years later, and they found, and her body was just like it was when they buried her or whatever. And so this is another woman, a nun, that is actually like kind of going through that. You have to perform so many miracles essentially that have to be verified, and so they send researchers out, and people make sure that somebody is actually a legit person. They're telling the truth. They're not a scammer, and there's like a lot of work verifying all of this sort of stuff.
Well, and am I correct in I seem to recall that doesn't the Catholic Church actually have people that whose job is like confirming miracles?
So with a lot of things, it's not, how do I say it? The Catholic Church could essentially give its blessing, no pun intended, say like, yeah, we believe this is legit, but you don't have to necessarily believe it. It's not part of the catechism. It's like, if you don't believe this, like, it's going to affect your eternal soul somehow. But they're saying, we have investigated this very thoroughly, and after our investigation, we have concluded that this
more than likely true.
Yeah, then if you believe this, then that's probably a good thing. But if you don't have any bearing on your eternal soul, essentially. The miracle of Fatima is one such example. where there was literally like thousands and thousands of people that saw essentially the sun falling from the sky during this miracle, with these small children who on a monthly basis basically saw Our Lady, who then gave messages about, this is 1917, if Russia does not essentially consecrate itself to her, then it would spread its quote unquote errors around the world. And so that's another one of those things where history has shown this was well before the Cold War and all of these sorts of things, and communism and the spread of socialism and communism around the world. So those are things where the Catholic Church has given its sort of hat tip to certain miracles.
Oh, Evie in the chat says there's an anime called Vatican Miracle Examiner, which I didn't know.
I don't I don't know. I have to look into it.
Yeah. And also Tim, I assume it's Tim, it said that they have people whose job is disproving miracles, called devil's advocates. So
there you go.
So there you have it. Oh, goodness sakes. I almost hit the wrong button and blocked Tim from the chat.
Well, that would have been funny.
Well, there's somebody there is somebody who I accidentally did that to, and I have forgotten who it was. So I can't even go back and undo it.
Tim, actually, during the writing process, Tim was the one who recommended a book to me on incorruptibles as well. So I was the overview of what I was planning. He's like, "Have you ever read this book?" And he's like, "You should get it." And I did. And so if you want to know about the script and all of this sort of stuff, Tim definitely helped out on this script, including the first one as well, obviously.
Oh. Yeah, and you were talking about when you came on to talk Soulfinder on the Demons match, that you and Tim just spent a lot of time hashing through the ideas over your combined Catholicness, which I think is kind of fun.
Yeah, it's good to have people that, if you're trying to be theologically accurate, can say like, no, you might not want to do that. You're going to be accused of heresy if you go down that road. So I had Tim read the script for the first one. Mike McNulty, who worked for he might still work for Bam Smack Pow, and he used to do stuff for Spider-Man Crawler, Catholic guy. He read it as well. And then after the first book came out, I had deacons and priests contact me, and they were like, "Hey, this is actually accurate. I wasn't expecting that, but it was." So good job, however you pulled that off. So kudos to Tim and Mike McNulty for keeping me on the straight and narrow on that stuff.
Oh, I just got a message that says from Matt Veely, Skinny, who says tell you, he says sup. So
no, nice. Hello, yeah. Skinny. I got Skinny's book as well in the mail recently, so I have not had a chance to read it since I've been doing my own campaign, but I do have it. It is open. It is ready to go, and it also came with an Epstein didn't kill himself tape or something along those.
Yeah, his packaging was super interesting.
That's really funny.
But yeah, I had another question in my head, and I don't remember what it was now. Curses.
I could go in any direction you want. If you want to talk about the script, if you want to talk about future ones, whatever you want to do, I can answer the question. If you want to give me hard questions.
So here's a question for you. So working with Matt, how was that different from working with Tim on the first one?
Not really all that much different. So every every artist, they're going to want the script in a certain way. And so I could either give more or less detail depending exactly what I did with Tim, how we worked together for Matt, and Matt was fine with it. So yeah, it wasn't really all that different. I just had to make sure that I learned certain things from the first book in terms of formatting. So the first time I wrote when I wrote the Demon's Match script, it was more like a movie script than a comic book script. And then Tim and Mark helped me out and was like, no, you should probably do this. You should probably break down by panels, and that would be good. And so for the second script, I broke everything down page by page, panel by panel. I gave as much information as I felt Matt would need, but then I told him, if I have 6 panels or 7 panels and you feel that this page would be better with 5, you're the artist. Your job is to make it visually look awesome. As long as it works within the context of the script and the dialogue and all of that sort of stuff, I don't care. This is just thoughts, but you're the artist. So I want to be able to give you the wiggle room that you need to be happy on this project.
So very cool. Very cool. And I assume Matt then is happy with the project, right?
Well, he's coming back for a 3rd round here. I got to get him a script in a couple of weeks, and he's basically going to be ready to go. I want to say like mid-April or maybe late April. We'll see. It just depends on how fast I finish the script. So it's about half done in terms of actually writing it out. The whole story is in my head. I know exactly where everyone's going, but it's just the past couple of weeks with launching this and getting everything ready. Usually at night I'm too exhausted after work and everything, and I'm just like, I'm going to bed.
For sure, I feel that. So, what are the projects that you have coming up here? Because you've mentioned you kind of have another artist for the next book. So is Matt looking at the book after that, or is he doing part of the next book, or what's going on with all of that?
Matt's doing all the inks on the next book and the internal art. And there is another artist who's coming aboard who is doing 2 covers for us, a front and back cover. And then also I asked him if he could do, so I'm going to put the first 3 stories into one collection. And this artist will do front and back cover. And then I wanted him to do dividers. So he'll do inside the book, the hardcover, he'll do one for Demon's Match, Black Tide. And then the next story, which is tentatively titled, it could change, so this is not a promise, but the Infinite Soulfinder Infinite Ascent. I don't know if that will change or not. We'll see.
Wow, that's a heck of a title. So Tim says that Matt is ready. He saw Godzilla versus Kong.
My wife and I were tonight.
Yeah, that's a fun title. I like that. So, and I know
a lot of mountaineering going on.
A lot of mountaineering going on. Yes, I've seen some stuff. It looks good. So one of the interesting things about it is that also about the book is it comes with the story twice, right? Beginning with colors by Brett Smith, right, and then just the wait, no, not far enough.
Just the inks.
Just the inks, right? What was the decision process with that?
That was based on reader feedback and people asking me. Enough people, they were just like, I would like to see what Soulfinder was like in black and white. Can you do black and white? So finally asked me that. I was like, okay, I'll just give people Matt's inks and the full story. And I'll ask Bill Williams, our letterer, if he can just transfer the inks or the letters over to the black and white and just keep it. And so then people can compare Brett R. Smith and Wes Hartman's colors with Matt's work, and they can see exactly how much Matt brings to the table to begin with, but then also how much the colorists bring to the table. Because I think sometimes colorists get the short end of the stick in terms of respect sometimes. And if you have a good colorist, they could do Brett's really good with lighting. He does really good stuff with lighting, and having him on the team with that was pretty cool. Indeed.
As much as I like the black and white of this one, I just got to say, I'm going to bring this one up again here. This 2-page spread, it's just the lens flare on it, just everything is just amazing, So bravo to Brett for this.
I really like the whale picture. Like if you could add a whale jumping out of the water, I could just watch, the Discovery Channel with whales jumping out of the water all day because they're so majestic as they jump out. The water flows.
Yeah, I was talking last night off the grid. We were talking about the script, and so there's a couple pages where there's another scene that I kind of wanted to have in there, and I was torn between not having these double page spreads and then a couple of the splash pages. I could use that real estate because I need to hit this 56 page limit. I'm up against that. And I was like, okay, well, I want this page with the priest, the incorruptible priest. I want them to turn the page, and that is what they see. Now, if I only made it one page, like a splash page, then I could have extended the scene at the end with the bad guy or whatever. And so then I'm getting into this weird sort of realm where it's like, how much do I want to tell? How much do I not want to tell? Will people understand that this character is going to come back? Are they going to... And so for the most part, people kind of got what I'm trying to do. But some people, understandably, they want it to be a fully self-contained tale. And they want to know the whole history of William Nebel. And they want to know who he is and why is he so threatening. And in my mind, I'm like, well, when you first met Darth Vader in Star Wars, he just was the embodiment of evil. That's what he is. You didn't know the story of Anakin, and we didn't know until many, many years later the backstory. But Vader. So this particular character, to me, you're coming in the middle of a story, and this is a man who has essentially become, for all intents and purposes, despair, hopelessness. He's given himself up to the abyss. He's lost. He's gone for the most part. And so and like I said earlier, it's more about the journey just to get to him more than anything else. So you have these characters, they almost die 10,000 times over just getting there. They barely get to the Black Mass to stop it. They're like soaking wet. They're bone, they're just tired. They need to go to Walter Reed Medical Center, and they get there and they're going to stop. And then the demon's just like, see you later. We'll be back later. And then just like sort of like leaves. And then that's where in the epilogue, they say like, well, if this guy is not going to give up the occult, then are going to come back again. So this hint. And so there was a balancing act between will they get what I'm trying to do? And I learned a lot on this one, basically. And I want to carry those lessons over every single book and make each book better.
Muted myself so I could drink my coffee and cough, and I forgot about it. What was like?
Yeah, I was wondering what that last sentence was there.
Yeah, I don't remember. Okay. Earlier you mentioned, you said you're up against a 56 page limit. Was that because of the format of the book, or was that because of the budget you were working on, or what was the reason for that limit?
No, I know that printers like to have things divisible by 8. And while it might not be totally necessary to have it, whether 56 or 64 pages, for whatever reason, and I should know like exactly why, but they really like things divisible by 8. And if you start throwing things off with the story for whatever reason, then that causes other people problems. And so I was like, okay, I will operate within these confines. I will not write a story that's 62 pages or 60 pages, even though I guess technically I can do that if I want to. And I was like, so I will try and stick to the 56 page. But now with a character driven story, it felt much easier for me to do that because I spent so much time developing what's going on with. better and why you should. A plot-driven story that's this big action adventure. A little bit where it was, I just learned a few things, and I felt like you mentioned a breathing room earlier. I think I need a little bit more breathing room, and so I think the next story, it's shaping up where I think it'll probably be 64 pages in order to do exactly what I want to do with having the big adventure, but also basically buttressing it a little bit more with some characterization, particularly with the villain at certain points in the story.
Well, I actually do know why they used to be 8 for what it's called stitched, like stitch bound books, and it's because they used to print them out in large sheets and then fold them into booklets and then cut the pages open on an edge as they were stitched together, because it's actually like your comic book where it's saddle stitched, where it's got just, they're all divisible by 4 because one sheet is really 4 pages, right? Mm-hmm. Front and back. So a stitched book is made up of a bunch of those, but the way they used to print them out to make use of the printers that they had, they'd actually print like 8 pages on it and then fold it in, stitch them, and then cut them open again.
Gotcha.
But I don't know if they still do it that way anymore. But so the tradition of divisible by 8 may just be a tradition. I don't know.
Right. And there's always people that even certain things that are not necessary, they still want to stick to that. So for me, if I'm dealing with a printer and they want that, and it's like, okay, cause this guy, even if it's an irrational headache. I haven't talked to the API about this, so I'm not saying they're being irrational, but it's like the more headaches that I cause for someone, the less inclined they're going to be to stick their neck out for me when I'm like, can I have spot gloss and glow in the dark and emboss and deboss and gilded pages and ribbons? Can I have all of that in one like sort of thing? And so they might be like, no. You can have one of those. I don't know how it would work, but I'm basically trying to like, there's always this balancing act in these big projects when you have to count on other people to do you favors and put in time after work to help you out. And so there's a guy at API, Joseph, who did a lot of stuff with the glow in the dark and making sure the figure little redder in the lady's hand showed up like perfectly. And it was, so he was like literally doing stuff off work to try and help me with this. And he did a job. And if I would push back on certain printing things, you might not get that extra help.
Well, yeah. And then the question is like, you're at 56. Could you bump it up to 64? Well, you got to make sure you can't just get 1 page out of that. You got to find 8 pages of material.
That could blow up in your face too, because it could just, those extra pages could just bore people or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I do think that just from the little bit you've talked to me about what's going on in volume 3, I think you can easily fit that in 64 pages. Just a guess.
Yeah, well, and then the other thing is I can't monopolize Matt's entire year. As much as I would love to have Matt for 112 pages. There's one guy who came to pages that you used for the book. You literally should have just filled it in with more characterization for Nebel and told that other story that you want to tell or whatever. And I was like, yeah, in a world where I could just have Matt do 112 pages, like I guess, but like he's got Punchline to do. He's got other stuff, other projects that he's working on, like multiple projects, and he's got multiple kids and all sorts of stuff. And I want Matt to continue working with me, and I don't want him to have a heart attack doing Soulfinder books each year.
Although there are worse ways of getting a heart attack. I'm just going to say that.
So, yeah, I'm just happy and grateful that he's going to be back for a 3rd round.
Yeah, no, I think it's fun. I think it's great how one of the things I love about Soulfinder is how seriously you take the doctrine stuff in it, but how it's also like you're not sparing points on the action, right? So like I can't remember who it was. I was watching a review of Demon's Match, and they were like, I think religion is silly, but this is an amazing comic book. And I don't think religion is silly, and I think it's an amazing comic book. And so I think you have you take the subject material very seriously. It's very honest and authentic to itself in terms of that, but you also are telling stories that are still really fun to read and to turn those pages. So I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, one of the things that's been kind of interesting with feedback is there are some people that they're kind of confused. Like some people believe Redder might actually have powers of some sort. And I think I was talking to you about it,
Yep.
and I have to explain to people, Father Redder has no powers. He at all. As an exorcist, all the power, if you ever hear someone claim to be an exorcist and they're like, I did this, I cast out the demon. It's like, no, that person is going down a very dangerous road. All of the power comes through Christ. It's only through the priest has the authority through the church to say specific prayers, but ultimately the only power to drive out demons is coming through Christ using various vehicles, whether it is the priest, whether it is Our Lady or whomever, whether it is some sort of, it's Saint Michael, whomever it is, but it ultimately the power rests in Christ, not Father Redder.
I think actually a good biblical story to illustrate that would be go and read the Moses story when God is instructing him to use the cane and it turns into a snake. Like God makes it turn into a snake. It's not any power that Moses had.
Yeah. Well, and the great follow-up to that is then, Moses comes to the Pharaoh and he does his little, his little thing. He lays this thing. Now, see, look, God sent me. Here's a snake that's a staff. And then the Egyptian wizards are like, well, hey, that's not a big deal. We have snake staffs too. And they do the same thing. And then Moses' staff goes and eats all the other snakes, crawls on back, and it's a staff again. But the other thing,
so for these stories, I like people debating. It's kind of like an Indiana Jones thing again, where is Indiana Jones a superhero or is he not a superhero? I try and essentially write the stories and the physical dangers and the psychological dangers where the reader can be like, you know what, on my best day, I'd be able to pull that off, in terms of the scuba diving stuff, or in the third one with the mountain climbing, or whatever it is. I try and like put Redder in these situations where it's really, is he tenacious enough? Does he have the mettle? Does he have the willpower to go through this and deal with the pain getting there? But then once he gets to the demon, then in many ways, so it's difficult because you need to have a formidable opponent, but the opponents, the demons in the face of Christ or Our Lady or the saints, or they're nothing. So like that's why the demons are scared of Christ, because they're not a challenge to Christ. So I need to make the psychological and physical challenges very interesting to people, because there are going to be times where, yes, ultimately the prayers are going to, the demon will go away. And so the psychological levels the writing has to be,
I think that's
very good for me to pull it off.
And I think that's one of the elements of the whole thing too, is that that God puts this glory in earthen vessels, right? so God uses, we're broken, we're messed up, and for whatever reason that's his decision, and so because anything we pull off is glory to him, because we're pretty inept of ourselves. And I think you have a good position to demonstrate that you have these combat veterans, these people that have shown themselves to have a certain togetherness in the physical world, but in the emotional and the spiritual world, there's just as flawed as everyone else. And that's whether it's fear or pride or greed or whatever that can be stumbling blocks to an effective service. And I think that's a cool thing. But we were talking about, I want to get back to one thing a little bit. You were talking about the nature of does Rhetor have powers? That whole question. It reminded me of the story from Acts, where there's the brothers. There's a set of brothers who are trying to cast out demons in the name of the Jesus whom Paul preaches. And the demon says to him, he says, I know Paul and I know Jesus, but who are you? And then
Right.
just beats the tar out of those kids. I think that's I think it's like in the 20s somewhere. I didn't look it up before the show.
Sometimes people ask me if I would have individuals other than Catholic priests performing exorcisms in a Soulfinder tale, and I'm open to that. But yeah, if you had a situation where it's like, you want me to put some kids into the book, or to start doing exorcisms like immediately of what you just said, it's not going to go well for those kids.
just like a little Father Rhetor fan club there in town. Sorry, that's terrible. That shouldn't happen. That's but I think it's we were talking about, you mentioned the that it's not Rhetor that has the power, it's of course God. That Rhetor is the implement which God is using to see his power be done. And I think it's really important to remember too, that's the situation we all are in, right? That it's him in whom we live and move and have our being, right? It's not just so if we're singing, we're singing because he made our voice. If we're dancing, we're dancing because he made our feet. That there's a humbleness that needs to be a part of all of that. And even if it was a situation where we're Rhetor or somebody did have a unique ability, that still is rooted not in themselves, but it is rooted in who they were made and how they were made.
Yeah, there was one guy who was asking me about the ending, and I was trying to be tactful and say, like, well, the prayer that he says at the end was, be it done unto me according to thy will. So in that situation, the bad guy has turned into his like pseudo squid abyss monster or whatnot. Spoiler after the fact here. And he goes under the water and he pulls Father Crane under the water. He's already taken bullets from seals and all of this. There is no way physically Father Rhetor can handle this challenge. It is above his pay grade. It's not going to happen. So literally the only thing he can do is basically pray to God and say to Our Lady, like, help, like I can't do this. And it's up to them. And if God does not intercede in that moment, Crane's dead. And so how do you write a story where you're trying to actually be biblically accurate, but also entertaining? And then for people that are more secular, they might not even like get it because they think like, oh, Father Rhetor he somehow had magical power that went into the like a rosary or whatever. And it's like, no, listen, you got to pay attention to the prayer. He's in that moment, the only thing he has to turn to is God. Nothing else, because that's the only thing you could do. And so I was hoping throughout the story, whether the characters are in the abyss, Rhetor's in the abyss, Crane's in the abyss. When Rhetor's there, the only thing that he has to get him out is prayer. And so it's very important there, prayer. When Crane is in the abyss, Rhetor prays from outside, and there's intercessory prayer. It shows the efficacy of prayer. So if you are sick and I'm praying for you, that scene where the harpoon appears in Crane's hand and he's like, Rhetor? He's acknowledging that the prayers of other people actually have effects in the spiritual world that most of us can never see. And they could like basically come to your aid. And so once again, you're in the abyss, you're in the lowest point possible. Sometimes the only thing that you could turn toward in those moments, and that you should turn toward, is prayer.
This is a very good technical argument that Tim brings up. The hardest part is going to be avoiding a literal deus ex machina where every ending hinges upon an appeal to God. That's a tough writing challenge. And I think one of the things that the framing, it's true. But one of the framing elements of Soulfinder that it has specifically is that not every threat is merely in the spiritual realm, right? The workings of the demons involved also affect the physical world. So in the same way that Redder appeals to God, and God sends the demon packing because there are intercessors beyond the world that are taking Redder's case. Redder still has to get out of the sinking submarine.
And also, the other thing that I would note is that, again, the physical heroism. So Chua, at one point in time, he literally saves Crane's life. While the ship is going down, he runs into the cabin. Crane's been unconscious for up fire carry, comes into the ocean with him and watches over him for an hour or however long it is for Redder to finally get back up. So if Chua does not show that heroism, Crane never makes it out alive. Crane never makes it into the submarine, and maybe the Black Mass happens. Once they're in their actual submarine, Chua at one point throws his own body in front of the bad guy who is trying to hit Redder. If Chua doesn't sacrifice his own body, maybe that hits Redder in the head, knocks him out, who knows. Then there's never that prayer to Our Lady with the rosary to begin with. And again, Abyss comes into the world. And so what I was trying to do is, like you said, there's all sorts of various forms of heroism that have to happen in order to even have a chance to get to the prayer that essentially buys them or takes Nebel off the chessboard for volume 3 or maybe volume 4, and then he'll come back because he's still into the occult or whatever. But so that is the challenge, is to show different forms of heroism and teamwork that all come together that save the day.
Indeed. So I know you're working on 3. You're working hard on 3. Do you have an idea where you're going to go with 4? Have you thought that through, or are you just laser focused on getting 3 taken care of?
Yeah, I have so depending on how you want to count the volumes. So volume 3 is this one in the mountains. Then I may go all the way back to Vietnam, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know if we're going to screw with the timelines a little bit, but basically Crane's origin. I want to tell Crane's origin. Then I want to scene in which it's the initial hunt for Nebel as well. And then the story that takes place after this volume 3, chronologically, with Redder and Crane and Chua, that is where essentially Nebel has not given. There's a scene in the Bible, essentially, where it says like the demons will go out into the world, and if they will come back to the house with their friends in tow and take up residence in that building. And so if Nebel hasn't given up the occult, maybe Abyss leaves for a little bit and then comes back with 7 more demons that are of the same rank or higher, and his body is essentially filled with all sorts of demons, and Redder doesn't even know which demon it is. So one of the things the exorcism is once you know the name of the demon, then it's much easier to essentially get the demon out through the prayers, through asking Christ to get rid of this stupid demon or whatnot. And so if Nebel is filled with all sorts of demons and they don't even know which demons are in there, which demon's in charge, then it becomes a lot harder for them to save the day. So eventually Nebel will be back, and I'm not really spoiling too much, but there'll be many demons at work inside of him.
That sounds exciting. So
how much research have you done on Vietnam?
Not as much as I should, but I have all the books that I need ready, and they're at the ready for me to essentially go into and get the story where
Like
I
battle
need to
books
be.
and things of that nature, or like.
Yeah, so there's different. I don't. They're on the shelf over there or whatever. But yeah, I have books on specific battles. I have books that are just on Vietnam in general. I have books by like an autobiographical story from a man who was in Vietnam, and he seems like a pretty sharp guy. And so I got his book. I just got it a couple of weeks ago. It looks pretty good, and I'll read that. So, long story short, with each book, I try and read a few good books to get myself where I need to be, so I could at least speak with some sort of authority. And then if I have to, I'll interview someone. So for this one, like I said, I interviewed a Navy SEAL veteran and was like, okay, if you needed to get into a nuclear sub, like, if you just needed to get in, and he's like, well, you would just need a breacher, and you would need to do this, and you need a really good breacher, and they have these, whatever they're like, torches or whatever, that they could just get through like anything, and it'll get through whatever metal you want to get into. So we would do that, and so he was explaining how you would get into a nuclear submarine if it wasn't just open for you to get into.
Well, you get Aquaman, and he punches a hole in the side. That's
right. So, so then I was like, okay, well, I need to make sure that I have SEALs there, and I got to get the SEALs there beforehand. And I wanted to have SEALs that were good. So the story has like the SEALs that were into the occult, and I didn't want just the Navy to be like, Captain Cummings. I didn't want the Navy to just be like, oh, they're all like bad. Why is the Army like, they're all really cool and nice guys, and the Navy just is like, they're all into the book. So I was like, I want to have a good group of Navy SEALs, and to show that, like, okay, well, there's good people, civilians, and there's bad civilians, but then there's good military guys, and then there's bad military guys. There's good government officials, and there's bad government officials, and nobody is immune from temptation.
Mm-hmm. Although I have to say, if Brian Ball had been in charge of the book, he probably would have just made the Coast Guard all evil.
Right. So,
I mean, that's fair, though.
I don't have a stake. It was just a joke for me.
I mean, mine was a joke too. I'm in the airport. I mean, what was it? We did a deployment with the Marines, and we had like a cabin without AC, air conditioning. And the Marines were like, oh man, this is like the best accommodations we've ever had. Usually we're like sleeping in a ditch. I was like, oh man, it's like the worst accommodations I've ever had. We don't have air conditioning. Come on.
We don't usually have air conditioning normally. So Tim says, I think it'd be funny if Phil and Matt appeared in Soulfinder and got killed, and then in another book they reappear. In Universe, Divine Protection keeps them alive and kicking. I was already killed in one book that Iconic Comics distributed, so
yeah.
You never know.
What was the second, whatever you call it? But yeah, the Black Ops book. Yeah. I was ripped to pieces by a alien mollusk. It was sad. It's okay. Probably had it coming. Anyway, so that's a question. So Tim is doing the Black Ops X Common America crossover this summer, which I'm totally stoked for. Are there any plans? And I know that there have been hints in the background, little cameo nods of stuff from Soulfinder and different things. Are there any plans to do a formal crossover between any of Tim's stories and Soulfinder?
I would only say that Tim has the carte blanche. If he ever wants to use Father Redder or Father Crane or Chua in any capacity, I've said before, Soulfinder Demon's Match wouldn't really exist if it were Tim when it came out, and it'd be very, very different if Tim wasn't kind enough to do it. So it's one of those things where it's like, dude, there would be no way on earth I would ever tell him he can't use Father Redder in a story. And so if he wants to use Father Redder, then I will salute, and I'll be very happy and very grateful that he's using the character.
Okay.
It all depends on whether Tim and Mark find a story that it works for them, but I would be totally cool with that.
If they ever happen to need a young priest and an old priest, who knows?
You never know.
You never do know. So I do not, man, I don't have any other questions. That was it. Yeah.
All right. Well, unless I almost said Father Cummings. Unless Captain Cummings has any questions, and it's up to you guys.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the thing that's the coolest is, a few years ago, everybody started doing all these projects, and it went on Indiegogo and Kickstarter and all that. And that was all great, but I felt like it needed to move to where, you could just buy the book and it comes to you. And so, Tim and Mark did a good job of getting the books out like instantly, but it was just like totally cool to see you make that movement towards, you order the book and you get the book like a couple days later, like
right.
Amazon service,
Yeah, that was a very stressful financial risk, but again, it was one of those things where, okay, well, this year, 2021, and dozens of Indiegogo campaigns. There are campaigns that I back that I still don't have my book. It's been out.
Yeah,
they've been working on it forever, and I know if I'm irritated, I know other people got to be irritated. There's all these campaigns out, and I was like, okay, well, what would be a way to stand out? Okay, well, to me, the logical progression for somebody who is getting into indie comics is to reach the point where I don't even need to crowdfund, because I have a reader base that I know is reliable enough. As long as I put out good art and a good story, then they're gonna take a chance on the book. And so after Demon's Match and the response to it, I was like, okay, I think I can maintain or retain a certain amount of the audience that's pretty good. And then I was like, okay, we're on Iconic Comics, and Tim and Mark and Matt and Bill, they've been on Iconic, and they've been doing books. And Tim and Mark the reputation has bled or affected Iconic in a way where people are like, they have faith in Iconic. And so all of these pieces sort of came together, and I was like, I think if I just go straight to Iconic, all of these factors coming together will allow for me to do this, to pull it off. I don't know if it'll happen. People could show up. I said on I think another stream where it's like you have the date to the prom and then you show up and maybe your date doesn't show up, and I didn't know what was going to happen, but I was like, I think we're going to be okay. And I did it, and Iconic nailed it with the fulfillment, and Tim and Mark and many, many other people have been great with promoting it and sharing pictures, and all of that sort of fed into each other. And people are like, wait, I could get a book in like 4 days. Okay. Yeah, I'm there. And it's a hardcover. And I actually like the story. It's like he didn't totally on the second one. At least it's respectable. So, okay, yeah, I'll do it. And it's turning out pretty well.
Yeah. And I think it's I will be excited. I will be very interested to see. Well, it's going to be kind of a different thing, because like the comparison, because you kept selling Demon's Matches way after the campaign. How many of those have you actually moved? Because you've been selling them. Because I've been seeing people like, message you on Twitter or whatever, just saying, "Is this still available?" And you're like, email me.
Yeah, the international customers, I've always dealt with them one-on-one. So with Demon's Match, I basically printed, again, I don't have the numbers right off. So here's the thing. I'm a writer, and I'm a writer at heart, and I don't always care about all the business stuff and all the numbers. So I just try and do ballpark figures for everything. So we'll just say that like 1,100 US backers, and then we'll just say like 500 international backers or whatever. And then it's been selling through Iconic, and I had done an extra print run. So we'll just say like I printed, I don't know, we'll say like 3,500. And I haven't checked yet, but I don't have too many copies left. Like I sent Iconic almost everything I have. So we are going to sell all of those copies of Demon's Match. So when all is said and done, when they're finally out, I'm going to have to reprint Demon's Match. So we should sell out of 3,500 of Demon's Match. And then of Black Tide, I want to say it's like basically 3,000 soft covers, like off the bat. And that saves you money if you just do it all at once instead of asking them to reprint 800 at a time. So I think I did like basically like 3,000 soft covers and then like 1,000 hard covers. And then I'm actually having them print 600. I guess I'll do it on your stream. I'm having them print 600 Timothy Lim hardcovers, and then I'm doing another 200 of the Dave Dorman hardcovers as well. But I don't know how many of those 600 Timothy Lim hardcovers I'm going to sell, because some of them are going to be prizes or gifts for people. We'll just put it that way.
I tell you, it was a really hard decision for me to just pick out which book I wanted, because it's okay. Here's a weird thing about me and collecting. I like my stuff to match, right?
Yeah.
So Tim did this. Oh, it's only hardcover. That's all we're doing. I was like, so you just so I was like, so my first two volumes of Common America just aren't going to match volume 3 at all. Should I rebuy them? I what do I do? I decided to just, get the one and keep the others, because that's the thing. But then I was kind of, in my heart, I was a little irritated about the whole deal. I don't want to be mad, but it just like kind of sand under the mantle,
Right.
And then I saw when you announced, oh, they're live for sale, and I said, oh, they're all hardcovers, and the soft covers, you can't get those yet. And I said, oh, maybe I'll wait. And then I got to look at that Dave Dorman cover, and I said, oh man, I think I gotta have that. So now my Soulfinders don't match, but that's the way it is.
Yeah, eventually those soft covers, I promise they will eventually get there, and I'm working on it.
Oh, that's actually true. In the chat, effing book, I think that's how he says his name. I'm not sure. Hardcovers are not allowed in jails. You can only send soft covers, and only square bounds. They don't allow saddle stitch books in, because you can take out the staples and stab someone.
There you go.
I know somebody who specifically was sending books.
Actually, I will give you a spoiler. So I was talking to a priest over the weekend, and one of my future stories, yeah, I guess I'll say this because you don't know the story. One of the settings will be a federal penitentiary. Oh. And so I was like, he was like, if you have any research questions, feel free to ask me. Like, I'm a resource for you. And I was like, well, actually, I have a story that's coming up in the future in a federal penitentiary. Can you help me with that? And he's like, oh, I could tell you some stories or whatever. But basically help me out in terms of what I need to know about that, because they obviously they visit the prisoners, and so that's going to be a future research that I need to get done.
So here is a question, and I do not remember if I've asked this before. With Soulfinder, with Demon's Match, you went through and you did some advertising on like Catholic radio and some Catholic websites that were not comic stuff, but you're saying, hey, I'm making this cultural product. It's Catholic focused. It's pretty orthodox. You should check it out. How did that do? Did you feel like you got some sales generated from that outside of the community marketing?
I did get sales. I did get priests and deacons who bought the book and liked it, and they asked for Christmas priests and deacons, and so that went well. But the bang for the buck on the first one was not really that good, because there were old ladies that were emailing particular websites, and they're like, "What's this demons, Matt? This is weird," like that sort of stuff. And so I'd have to tweak the advertisements, because they just saw. So I went through Relevant Radio the first time, and it's just like Father Redder with this like the match, and there's this king cobra over his head, and the guys got back to me and they're like, "You caused quite a stir in the office today. Like, we've never seen anything like that before. Like, that was the buzz of the office here." And I was like, so
I can just imagine Dana Carvey as the church lady being
that precious.
That's essentially what it seems like it happened. And right. And so some people would click, or they were nervous. They didn't even want to click it because they're like, "What? I don't know if I should even click this or not." And so we had some issues with that. But I think there's promise in it. So there's that. But this time around, I'm actually doing Catholic YouTube channels in the near future, which I will talk about when after it happens. But that should be interesting, because I'll be able to go face to face in YouTube talking to a number of people, and I think that will work out a lot better. So we'll see, because that could be huge if they're receptive to my message and what I'm trying to do. I think that could really impact sales.
Well, and because the Christian YouTube scene is it's massive and growing as well at the same time too.
Well, and I think a lot of it's made up
Right.
of younger kids that are a little disaffected by everything, where it's they're just like, well, all those Gen X people have left us behind, and I don't know what to make of all of that, because we live in a world that doesn't like our overall society. We've been having this culture war thing going on for 3-4 decades, right? And some people don't even understand how long it's been going on, but it's just been.
Some people think it just started like a couple of years ago.
Well, yeah, but even with some of these young grad kids, they're just like, for them, they're getting into Orthodoxy or Catholicism or Westminster Confessional Baptist Reformation theology, because it's like a countercultural thing, and so they don't have they don't necessarily understand that. I think it's how much of a slog it is, and then a lot of the older people have just sort of given up on everything, right? And so because it's just like, because we've been living in a morass of stuff for how long? I mean, it can be exhausting, and I think one of the things that really doesn't get enough talk on this, and this is something that I think we miss out on, is that we are in a culture war. Absolutely. There are two ways of looking at the world, and they're mutually exclusive. Either truth exists or it doesn't, right? And that's what it really comes down to. We can argue about the nature of that truth if we can all accept that there's a truth, but there's just two sides that disagree on what that is. And it impacts the idea of whether truth exists, impacts every area of human existence, arts and philosophy and politics and religion and everything. And I think we've done a really poor job of what I think the only way to deal with a culture war is, which is make excellent art and say true things. And I think there are people that are really good at saying true things that have horrible taste in art, and people that are really good at making art that have horrible understanding of truth. So I think one of the things that I appreciate about Soulfinder, and I appreciate about what Tim's doing with his stuff, and what I appreciate about Doug TenNaples' stuff too, and there are other people, but those are some people that have had some success with it, the art is really good, and it's very true, and that's something that we need. God, we got to have both of the marriage of the stuff. So congratulations, Doug, for being one of the people that's pulling it off. I think really well.
Yeah, well, I got a good team of dudes around me, and Tim and Mark have helped with both scripts. And like I said, guys like Mike McNulty and Wes Hartman and Brett and Bill Williams and Matt and all these dudes and API. And it's kind of insane how many people, how many man hours go into one book. And I've said before, there's a video online. It's a piece called iPencil. And it's about just how much work goes into making a single pencil. And it's like, just for something like this, the amount of man hours is just, it's kind of weird to think about it. And it's like, from my perspective as a writer, it's like, that's one sliver of it. But from everything from the people doing the gold foils and then the ribbons and emboss, and it's crazy.
Well, and you think too with API print solutions, like those guys are the top of their game. I mean, think about the hundreds of years of experience that they bring to the table with that kind of stuff. It's remarkable, because I know, like Doug Tenaple prints there, and he's taken the video camera around and shown the process, and their setup is insane. And to be able to put that all in there, and that dedication to quality that goes into it. This is one thing. I have such a soft place in my heart for the old newsprint, right? And it's the quality of your books and Tim's books and everything API does is just so high, but it does make turning the pages harder than I'm used to. So I can't just curl up on the couch and read it like a regular floppy. I've got to, take a little extra time and have something I can use to turn the pages with.
Yeah, the paper stack is pretty hefty.
Yeah.
But it definitely has substantial. And one of the fun things too, that I really appreciate too, is that the content itself is substantive enough that it feels like it belongs in a book that stout, right? And not every comic out there.
Yeah, well, I've said before that I just want to. Sorry, there was a little delay there on my end.
You wouldn't want to bring it to the bath?
Well, because it's
a little reading tray. You could have it in the bath while you sit there and take a bubble bath, maybe smoking a pipe.
There you go. You were going to say there, Doug?
No, one of the things that I wanted to do with these books is have something that someone would be proud to have on their shelf, and maybe in 10 years they could pull it off again and be like, oh yeah, that was like a really good story. Or maybe they read it every once a year, or they've got a kid and they're just give it to the kid to read, and just not something that they would just either throw out or they would just throw in a box and they would just totally forget about it. But just something that's there. And I don't know, I just know when I was growing up, maybe you visit relatives' house and you see something on the shelf and you grab it, and then if you like it, you're just like, can I borrow this? And that sort of stuff. I was hoping that sort of thing would happen.
Yeah. I think it's a product that is built for the future. That is for sure.
Well, and it's the perfect length, because I read the first book again, and then I read, because I knew it was coming, and then the next day I read this one. You could legitimately read both of them like in one, sitting. They don't take too much time, but you could slow down and do all the, little Easter eggs that are in there. You could research those while you're reading the book, or
right.
Like multiple different ways that you could go about it. And I really like this story right now more, but I'm not sure if that's because it's brand new, and I'm reading it for the first time now, and I was excited to get it. It's that like newness to it. So it'll be interesting to see, how it stacks up again, when you read it, a year from now or so.
I think the thing that I really enjoyed about the work is, like you were talking about, how it's just making the world bigger, getting more players in it, and I agree. I think that's a big factor. that just being able to kind of see what else is there. It's not just.
It's like you don't want it to turn into a Murder, She Wrote situation where she's in this little town in Maine or whatever it was, and you're just like, why is everyone possessed in Steepleton, Maryland? Like, why is there like literally you just keep bumping into everyone and demons are popping out of people? And so I was like, okay, you gotta expand the world, and it lends itself to the military, obviously, and espionage and all of that. But if you wanted to, you could even go back if you're old enough. I mean, you could turn it into something like that. But I didn't want Steepleton to be Erie, Indiana. I wanted it to just be where these priests are located. This is where this Soulfinder, he lives. But at the same time, his mission might require him to go to Nepal or a fictional country that is essentially like Nepal or something along those lines. Or it might require him to go. I mean, he's still pretty close to Maryland. In this one, he's just essentially like 20 miles off the coast of Maryland, down in the sea. So he's still pretty close, but it wasn't just relegated just to his little town there.
Right. Well, and I mean, really, Maryland is a great location for this kind of story anyway, because it's, the Osceola corridor. You got all sorts of stuff going on there. So,
all sorts of military. The Pentagon is nearby, and you have all sorts of like cool things, and obviously DC. But then it's close enough. On the East Coast, you could go all sorts of places and harbors, and you could. Whatever,
2-hour train all sorts of Salem.
Right.
No, I mean, just if you wanted to visit Massachusetts, that's one place you could go.
There you go.
So, pardon me, but yeah, that was So, you say you're looking at to try to get Matt the next, which is Matt Weldon, not this guy, because if you follow me on Twitter, you've seen some of my drawings, and they're not that good. Anyway,
you don't want to see my drawings.
Oh man. Anyway. Well, you said you're looking at getting Matt the script early. I mean, did you say May, June?
I'll probably get Matt a script in mid-April, maybe a little later than that, and then he's just about ready to go. He has a couple things that he has to do with his own IP and some other stuff, and so the timing should be almost perfect. So as long as the script is where it needs to be, I think that he'll start drawing it before May, and then it's just I don't have a specific timeline. If it winds up, I could get it out this year, then great. If not, then that's fine. I think actually the hardest thing is going to be I want to make sure that the hardcovers that I want for this one, there's some planning that's already going into those, like now. And I want to make sure that that's where it needs to be. And there's a couple, there's some things that I asked about the book, if API can do it, that ties in with the theme. I know this sounds cryptic and weird, but like I was asking them questions, and I was like, "Can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do that? Yes, we can do that. Yes, we can do this." Okay, so it just depends on when the printing.
Would I got a question? Would you say that the printing, because it takes because you have to ask so many questions to somebody and give it over to somebody else, is that like the hardest process to maneuver, I guess?
So with this particular cover, if you look, there's the harpoon, and then the Redder and Crane are spot glossed, but the harpoon is glow in the dark. Mm-hmm. So the plant that we were at actually was really nervous about having spot gloss literally next to the glow in the dark, because if they bleed together, or I don't know exactly, but they were nervous about that, and they didn't want to do it, and we were just like, do it. Didn't do it quite like that, but we were just like, hey, we can make this work. Like, it's gonna pay off, just And so the guy that I was talking with at API, he made a little bit of adjustments, and then they did it, and it worked. But that was something that we basically had to negotiate, or maybe I don't know, a little back and forth in terms of getting them to do what I wanted to do. And if the more stuff that you have going on with the cover, that just adds another layer of work that has to be done. More potential for screw ups. And if you screw up on a hardcover book, that's like insanely expensive. And I think they get nervous at times because you don't want to screw up an order of 1,000 hardcovers and have to do them all over again.
Yeah, for sure. Because that just starts to eat into the bottom line, you know.
Right.
So, yeah. That's crazy. So that's cool. So we might get more Soulfinder in 2021, but probably not. Good to know.
Yeah, we'll see. It just all depends on. It won't be nearly as much as the last wait because the pandemic threw a lot of things off. But that was sort of almost like a blessing in disguise because it gave me more time to work on the hardcovers and go over things with API and get that where I wanted it to be.
Very cool. Yeah. So we're talking about working with API. Storyteller in the chat said, so you had to convince them that it was a good idea.
Well, if I was just doing one thing, but when you start adding multiple layers, you know, deboss, emboss, glow in the dark, spot gloss UV, all those sorts of things on one face, basic of a cover, then it gets a little. It gets a little of the full on top of that. So it's just like you just keep adding these layers that they have to do, and they have to do it right each time. I think they're very confident in what they do, but at the same time, like I was saying, financially, if you screw up, then it's going to cost you. It's going to hurt your wallet.
Yeah. So here's a quick question. What are some of the terms? What is the difference between a deboss and an emboss?
So that's just really whether it's raised or it's giving it depth. Or let me see if you could even see it on the other cover. If you have the other cover, if you feel the porthole, you could actually feel the depth to the porthole on there. And so it's just whether it's raised. And then if you look on the inside, you maybe the light on here, but you can see that it actually has the depth to it where they either had to push it out or it had to give it some depth to it.
So an emboss is pushing out and a deboss is pushing in?
I believe so. Hopefully I'm not wrong on that, but I believe that is the case.
Okay.
I learned a lot of printing this time around because initially when I was asking about it, they're like, oh, we could do this emboss and we could do this deboss, and then you're going to get the FNGs, and then we're going to have this and that. And I was like, what is an FNG? I don't even know what an FNG is. Like, no. They're like, oh, it stands for folded and gathered. That's where we send you just without the actual binding. It's just sort of like sewn, and you could see whether it's where you want it to be. And I was like, okay, well, I didn't know what an FNG was, and I'm sorry if I sound stupid for asking, but I had to ask. And
sweet. So somebody said scratch and sniff.
Somebody do want this. I don't know if I could do the scratch and sniff, but yeah, I was saying I think
you had scratch and sniff and it smelled like sulfur.
Or something.
Somebody said that. My thing is when I don't know something, I just say, I'm stupid. I don't know. Can you help me? And that seems to have aided both projects. With the first one with Tim and Brett, multiple times I was like, I'm an idiot. I don't know how to do this. Can you just help me? Can you teach me? If you can't teach me, can you do it for me, please? And so just surround yourself with guys that are smarter than you or more skilled than you are, and then delegate the task to them if they can't teach you.
That's hilarious. So this is currently available. Now, if I had been a decent host, I would have already had the link so I could drop it in the chat so people could go from here to go buy Doug's book at iconiccomics.com. But I do not have the link prepared. So you'll have to just go ahead and type it in yourself with your 10 fingers, and hopefully everybody watching has 10 fingers and nobody's horribly offended that I just assumed. But iconiccomics.com, and you can get to there from there. And Doug, thank you so much for coming on and talking about it. It's just about 9 o'clock, so I should probably call it. I have a couple things I have to do before the night is over with. So
cool, man. Great catching up with both of you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and Captain Cummings, thanks for coming on. We're gonna have to have you on again sometime to talk comic history. So
yeah, I've been reading some Stan Lee comic, or I've been on a biography kick. So I got this one. This one's controversial. Roy Thomas actually wrote an article basically saying this was a good comic, or this was a good history book with facts. It was well researched, but the guy Abram Reisman put too much of his opinion into it and attached those opinions to, like, basically Jack Kirby. So it'd be interesting to maybe we can talk about that or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. We were Captain and I were talking about a month ago, and one of the most interesting things that we both, because we've been doing some reading, and both come to the interesting conclusion that a lot of our comic history are just people's reminiscences, and sometimes it's just the stories that they told to make things more interesting at cons. So how much of it's true and how much of it's embellished, and that's really an interesting little tidbit to try to sift out. Some of the things that we take as gospel might not be entirely so.
Well, I'm reading his autobiography right now, and it's fun to, because Stan Lee isn't here anymore. It's fun to read, like, because he wrote his book, or George Mayer. It's really weird because he has like an author, and then like he adds to it or whatever. So you get like some Stan Lee went and did this, and then you get him adding his own like Stan Lee-isms into it, and it's really fun to read those stories with his sort of style.
Cool. But yeah, that's a future show. So if you guys find this, I know we had some people watching that don't normally watch because they're Doug fans, and so they came for Doug. If you guys find this interesting, give us a subscribe or just watch it on Twitter. I'll be announcing things eventually. I don't have a show booked for next week yet. We're gonna see, because I've been so busy I haven't contacted. I was wanting to do Doug. I was wanting to do the last time we had the old guys stream. I wanted to do the reprise of that next week, but I hadn't talked to anyone else yet. I haven't talked to you until now, so I don't know if anyone is available or not. I may have to make something up.
Sure, you'll pull it off.
Oh, I hope so. But week after, we've got some people that are coming on to talk about their crowdfunders, and I don't have their names in front of me, so we'll find out. I'm a horrible host. Anyway, thank you guys so much for coming on. And out there in the world, keep reading comics, and goodness sakes, go buy Soulfinder. What are you doing with your life? Come on. Okay, you guys all have a good night. I clicked the button. Why isn't it doing it?